Part 14. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 131. After the three of them left, Ling Gu started talking to Xiaoran and Wu Yu. And the other side. The three bloodthirsty people walked side by side in the courtyard. They were about to return to their room and start digesting their trip to Tianqian's secret realm. Huo Yi also talks to the two of them from time to time. After a while, there were several footsteps behind him. It is the disciples of Profound Heaven Sect located in the courtyard. And it was Guanggan who took the lead. Bloodthirsty glanced at them and knew that they were here to ask about Tianxuan's secret realm. Shui glanced at Yun Fengji, who nodded coldly. Seeing this, Shui looked at Huo Yi in front of him and said, Yun Fengji and I still have something to deal with, you and Guan go ahead and tell them. The words have fallen. Without waiting for Huo Yi to reply, the two figures disappeared from the place. Only Huo Yi was left standing there with a dazed expression on his face. I haven't agreed yet, Huo Yi sighed helplessly. Then Guanggan walked up to Huo Yi, patted Huo Yi on the shoulder, and asked, Brother Huo Yi, tell us, have you encountered anything in Tianqian's secret realm? For example, monsters or magical treasures and stuff like that. Yes, yes. Senior brother Huo Yi, can you tell us? Several disciples on the side echoed. Huo Yi was about to cry but had no tears, so he helplessly held his forehead. Then he answered for several people. They talked for half a quarter of an hour before they were willing to leave. Say it. Huo Yi yawned, stretched, tapped his sore shoulders, and then returned to his room. He wants to go back and have a good sleep, although as a martial artist, he does not need to sleep, because once a mortal embarks on spiritual practice, he does not need to participate in the daily life of mortals, and sleep is naturally included. Huo Yi just wants to review that martial artists' sleeping is also beneficial, as it can restore one's mental strength. Say it. In the void. Several figures gathered here. It is the people of Profound Heaven Sect. The leader was Qin Feng, flanked by Qi Kui, Lei Wuxian, and others, and behind him were the major peak masters and elders. At this time, each of them looked serious, as if they were discussing something important. Qi Kui looked at the people behind him and said in a deep voice, the Tianqian secret realm has ended this time, but we have also caused some trouble. I believe you also saw the facial expressions and movements of the three major worshippers of the heavenly palace just now, right? Everyone nodded when they heard this. So we have to start to prevent these three major offerings to prevent them from getting angry and retaliating against me. Profound Heaven section, regardless of whether they really want to come to us or not, we have to be alert. That's right. Lei Wuxian on the side nodded and said, perhaps as the great elder said, Tiangong will never give up. In a few days, they will definitely come to trouble me. Profound Heaven Sect. Speaking of this, Qi Kui looked at the leader Qin Feng. He knew Qin Feng's identity. He looked respectful and asked, Master Qin, I wonder if the sect master has any news for you. Upon hearing the question, Qin Feng turned around without changing his face, raised his eyes to look at the crowd, and said softly, of course there is, the sect leader also knows the importance of this matter. In a few days, another powerful man with emperor level will come to the central territory, and the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace will also come. You just need to defend the Heavenly Palace, and the rest will be left to those sent by the sect master. Just be a strong person. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Then what should we do now? Should we continue to hide in the void, or show up near them? Lei Wuxian asked. Qin Feng glanced at him, his eyes slightly thoughtful. After a while, he said, hide in the void and wait until the strong man comes to discuss it. I will make it clear to you then. Lei Wuxian nodded, and no one asked any more questions. Say it. The scene changes. I saw only one, majestic and resplendent grand hall towering above the clouds. The place is surrounded by clouds and mist, and the scenery is beautiful. From time to time, there are birds flying around, just like a fairyland on earth. And below the clouds, there is a layer of lake-like galaxy. The lake is so wide that you can't see the end at a glance. All you can see is the galaxy spread out over the lake. The lake is very bright, like shooting stars. The name of this lake is Wanju Lake. It means forgetting sorrow and not thinking about the past. This is the day when the palace master of today's palace got his name. I saw the main hall above the clouds. Directly above the main hall are written the two characters Dragon Fei Fengwu Emperor Palace. And from time to time, there will be strong men with powerful auras passing by here. Without exception, they are all disciples or elders of Tiangong. Their faces will show respect every time they pass by. It seems that there is a powerful person in this hall that they are willing to serve. In the main hall, 8 white stone pillars soar into the sky. There are several patterns of flying birds carved on the stone pillars. In the center of the hall, there is a red carpet that leads directly to the top of the hall. Looking up, he saw a peerless beauty, as beautiful as a celestial immortal, sitting on the throne. Her skin is as beautiful as snow, and 3,000 green silk strands are draped around her waist. Her eyes are as bright as the starry sky. A flowing cloud robe clings to her skin, revealing her proud figure, and a pair of white and slender jade legs are exposed. Enough to make people's blood burst. The aura she exudes is enough to make even the strongest martial emperor fall for it. She is the current palace master Li Ziyun. You can also call it Ziyun Fairy. And below her, a man with an indifferent face and arms folded stood quietly in the center of the hall. He is the proud one of the 4 great emperors in Tiangong. Also the strongest one. The status is second only to the current palace lord. His cultivation level is the best in the entire profound heaven continent, and the number of women who admire him is enough to rank from the central region to the southern region. There was a hint of a joking smile in his expression, but the indifference in his eyes were like a cloud mountain fog, blocking the truest expression in his eyes, making it difficult for people to see through and guess. Beside him, there was an old man in white robes with an old face and white hair and beard, standing there respectfully, looking like he was reporting something. You mean Zhou and the others died in Tianqian's secret realm? Li Ziyun frowned and asked. Hearing this, the old man quickly cupped his hands and replied, Yes, Palace Master, the 3 elders have been waiting there for several hours but did not wait for Zhou and the others to come back. However, they knew that other sects and the disciples of the big forces were not there. We have returned safely, only my Tiangong disciples did not go out, so as expected, Zhou and the other 3 may have died among them. And the 3 elders have also speculated that the culprit may be the profound heaven sect who shined in the 5 realms competition. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 132. Profound Heaven Sect. Hearing these 3 words, Li Ziyun frowned and couldn't help but pause. After a while, he looked at the old man and said, According to what you said, this profound heaven sect disciple is not stronger than my Tiangong disciple? Even Zhou and the others can't defeat him, and he is still in the secret realm. Hearing this, the old man didn't say anything. That's true. His eyes turned slightly, as if he thought of something. He looked at Li Ziyun and said in a deep voice, Palace Master, the 3rd elder has one more sentence for me to hand over to you. Li Ziyun frowned and glanced at him. Explain. It's the Palace Master. The 3 elders said that this profound heaven sect has great potential. Perhaps it will be a nail in the unification of our Tiangong profound heaven continent in the future. We must pull it out before it has developed and strangle it in the cradle. We cannot let it grow. Oh. Li Ziyun looked confused. So, this profound heaven sect still has the strength to fight against my heavenly palace. Can a force that has just emerged not long ago be able to fight against my heavenly palace? The old man didn't speak. In fact, he was also surprised by what the three elders said. Let's ask a force that has just emerged. No matter what, it is impossible to fight against a force that has survived for tens of thousands of years. Although there are only about 20 powerful martial emperors in Tiangong on the surface, there are up to 30 people secretly. Looking at the forces in the entire Central Territory, who can fight against Tiangong? Even the Suanmen, Gu Sect, Black Demon Sect, Yundan Sect, and Longquan Sect combined can't do it. These forces only have 3 powerful martial emperors. Li Ziun glanced at the old man and waved to him. Stay back first. I will make it clear to the third elder later. Yes, Palace Master. Seeing this, the old man bowed his hands and retreated. After the old man retreated, Guiyo's expression in the main hall was no longer indifferent, but he showed a joyful smile. Appeared next to Li Ziun, looked at him and asked softly, Ziun, what kind of trouble have you encountered? Do you need me to help you solve it? Li Ziun, who was sitting on the throne, glanced at him, shook his head and said, no need, it's just a sect that has just risen. Even if it has great abilities, how can it be worthy of my heavenly palace? This little thing is not enough. Excuse me, I will send someone to solve it myself. Hearing this, Guio nodded without saying anything else, and then said, Ziun, do you have anything else you need my help with? If so, just tell me and I will do my best to help you. Solve. When Li Ziun heard this, he smiled. The smile is really like the snow lotus on the ice and snow mountain, its beauty is not lost even when it is cold. Before she could answer, Guio, who was beside him, immediately rubbed Li Ziun into his arms. Holding Li Ziun's small waist, Guio couldn't help but feel a little comfortable with this fragrance that was unique to her. I feel much better. But these actions caused Li Ziun's delicate body to tremble, and he quickly moved his hand away, rolled his eyes at him and said, this is in the main hall, and it is inappropriate for you and me to do this. If others see it, yes, it will cause criticism. What are you afraid of? There was a trace of disdain on Guio's face, and he looked at Li Ziun affectionately and said, it doesn't matter if others see it. If they see it, I will prove to them that Yu Ziun is my woman. If they want to say anything, what explanation do they want? I'll give them a taste of my fist, Guio snorted coldly, looking arrogant. Seeing him like this, Li Ziun covered his mouth and chuckled softly. Of course they don't dare, but the relationship between you and me cannot be exposed yet, otherwise it may cause some trouble. I also hope that you will take the overall situation into consideration. Li Ziun stroked his chest and said softly. Feeling the tickling sensation on his chest, Guio couldn't help but show a look of enjoyment. He was obsessed with this feeling. Looking at her, he stroked Li Ziun's face and said softly, don't worry, I will take care of the overall situation, but... Having said this, Guio showed a trace of amusement on his face, stopped stroking, looked at Li Ziun's charming face, and said something in her ear. Then can I be with you today? Hearing this, Li Ziun's face turned red, she rolled her eyes at him helplessly, leaned on his chest and said, of course it's okay, I'll let you enjoy it today. Ha ha ha. Guio laughed loudly, kneaded Li Ziun's body hard, and patted her buttocks. Snapped. Then I hope you will do what you say and don't let me down. Li Ziun nodded slightly, like a little kitten, cute and beautiful at the same time, making people want to ravage him. Guio couldn't help it anymore and kissed her directly. Omit a few hundred words. Say it. The heavenly palace is a residence for worship. This is a pavilion. The color of the pavilion pillars is ancient dark green. The Shizuo chair is dreamy gray and white, and the two are combined to form a beautiful picture. There are green trees and gurgling water next to the pavilion. From time to time, pigeons and swallows will fly to the branches, and from time to time, they will also make melodious calls. The breeze is blowing. I saw 3 old men suddenly appearing on the tables and chairs that were empty just now. These 3 people are exactly Yifeng, Chu Xian, and Yan Qing. I saw Yifeng, otherwise Faxu, looked at the 2 of them and asked softly, "How is it? Has the palace master told you anything?" Hearing this, Chu Xian shook his head. "I said it, but the palace master did not allow us to go to Profound Heaven Sect to cause trouble. Instead, she asked us to wait patiently for a few days." Wait patiently? Yan Qing was not happy when he heard this. With a red face, he said angrily, "How can we wait patiently? If we don't pursue the Profound Heaven Sect this time, then where is the face of our Tiangong? If my disciple of the Tiangong dies in the Tianqian secret realm, if we don't investigate, nothing will be done. How do we make the world see our heavenly palace? What's the use of waiting patiently? Then what can we do? It's impossible for us to go and question the palace master," Chu Xian said helplessly, spreading his hands. Snort. Yan Qing rolled up his sleeves and said, "In my opinion, it was the proud man who caused the harm. Didn't you see how much our palace master loves this proud man? I just listened to what the old guy said. When he was admonishing, 'The pride is in the clothes,' doesn't this mean that he is obstructing it?" Hey, after hearing this, Yifeng's expression changed and he raised his arm to tell him to stop talking. "You can't say this nonsense. You must know that Guiyo's own strength has reached the peak level of martial emperor, which is on the same level as our palace master. Even if he interferes with it, we can't do anything. We are not as strong as him." Yan Qing glanced at him, but said nothing. What Yifeng said is indeed true. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 133. However, Yan Qing actually misunderstood Guiyou, and Guiyou did not interfere with it. On the contrary, when Li Ziun revealed this force, Guiyou even said that he would help her solve it. But Li Ziun did not let him go. Instead, he felt that a force that had just emerged did not need the martial emperor to go. It only needed to send a few martial emperors to go. Li Ziun's message to the 3 elders is: they don't need to worry about this matter, he will send strong men to solve it. However, because I had to do something with certain people, I didn't send a strong person immediately, so it was delayed. But the main reason is that Li Ziun doesn't look down on this Profound Heaven Sect at all. In her opinion, a sect that has just emerged is not very strong and cannot produce any top experts. Li Ziun is not in a hurry. Profound Heaven Sect does not pose a big threat to her. After Li Ziun resolves other matters, she will send strong men to deal with Profound Heaven Sect. So this matter was actually delayed by Li Ziun. How about we wait a little longer? In fact, there is no need to rush. Anyway, there are no other powerful warriors at the emperor level in the Profound Heaven Sect. What if we wait for another 10 days and 100 days? It's just clean it up later, Chu Xian said. Seeing this, the 2 of them nodded. Chu Xian was right. Yan Qing was too anxious about this matter. The main thing is that Yan Qing is too loyal to Tiangong, so whenever he meets some sects with potential, he will be uneasy. Say it. Time flies by like the speed of light. In the blink of an eye, we have arrived 3 days later. The strong man sent by Qin Xian finally came to the central territory. Then came the Soul Palace and Shadow Palace. In the palace courtyard, several people were sitting together in the pavilion. They are, Soul Demon, Shadow Demon, Chuyu, Xiaoran, Linggu. Chuyu is the powerful martial emperor sent by Xiaoran. And behind them, several familiar faces appeared. For example, Gu Yuntian, Gu Yunfen, Chu Yulei, Feng Yun, Jialing Feng, and others. Ling Wu, who was sitting at the top, looked at everyone and said, "I believe you all understand what the sect master has entrusted to us, right?" "Of course it's clear," everyone nodded. "Chuyu told them before they came." Seeing this, Ling looked serious and said in a deep voice, "In that case, we don't need to talk nonsense, and quickly use your power to pay attention to the movements of the Tiangong. I believe it won't be long before Tiangong takes action against us, so I'm sorry to trouble you all." At this point, Ling stood up and bowed his hands to everyone. When everyone saw this, they stood up quickly. They couldn't bear such a big gift. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Don't worry, Great Elder, leave this matter to us." Ling nodded slightly. The words have fallen. The figures of several people had disappeared. Only Xiao Ran and Ling were left. The two looked at each other and nodded. "Say it." "All I saw was a dark place. This place is filled with countless figures in black robes. The aura emitted by oneself is enough to shake the void nearby, but everyone suppresses their own aura at all times. Because here, there are people who are loyal to them. Their chests have blood-red soul and shadow characters written on them. Without exception, everyone is the guardian elder of the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace. They all have the power of life and death in their hands, and thousands of living beings will all die as soon as they open their mouths. But here, no one dares to be presumptuous, and their eyes are only looking at the two deist figures on a high platform. On the high platform, the soul demons and shadow demons in black robes and purple robes each had their hands behind their backs, looking at everyone with a pair of blood-red eyes. Everyone who was being watched looked respectful and did not dare to be presumptuous. No matter how powerful they are just ants in their eyes. The reputation of the two is at the peak of the sky in the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace. If the two of them dare to say one thing, no one dares to say two, because the person who says two has already closed his eyes under the 9 springs. Soul Demon glanced at Shadow Demon and his meaning was clear. The Shadow Demon nodded. Seeing the Soul Demon looking at everyone, he said loudly, "I believe you all know where we are now, right?" Everyone nodded after hearing this. The central domain is the essence of the profound heaven continent. There are countless treasures and powerful people here. It is completely different from the other 4 domains. There are countless geniuses in the central territory, and there are also many powerful forces hidden in it. I have brought you here for no other reason than to conquer this place and turn those high-ranking forces into puppets driven by my soul palace. Having said this, everyone's eyes have become full of passion, and they can't wait to firmly control those forces now. Every elder protector is full of energy, and his eyes are endlessly emitting light, like a demon hiding under hell. Some of them were summoned by Qin Xian, and some were recruited midway. Each of them is cruel and ruthless, and will not be tempted by beauty or wealth. Before joining the Soul Palace, they were all heinous demons who committed many crimes. They had accumulated countless bones in their hands, and the blood of death had already filled their hearts. They all have one goal, which is to become a top powerhouse and a person standing on the sky. The Soul Palace gave them this opportunity, gave them the opportunity to become stronger. Here, they only need to complete the task to get what they want. There is no need to play with the world, do not need to give gifts, and do not need to do anything. What relationship? Because these are useless people in the Soul Palace, and their survival here relies on nothing more than their own strength and brains. Before, they were either beggars, independent cultivators, or slave puppets who were swayed by the top powerful men of the powerful families. They had no status at all. The reason why they are cruel and ruthless is that they have been affected by the laws of the spiritual world. A person's character has been firmly worn out by the years, and the passion he once had is no longer there, and some have only become stronger. They are very loyal to the soul demon, and this loyalty has already been deeply rooted in their bones. Seeing everyone's fiery expressions and the auras they exuded from time to time, Soul Demon smiled coldly, paused for a moment and then said, "So I only give you one task, and that is to use your strength and brains to imprison those forces. Take firm control and turn them into puppets and our slaves. I hope you will not disappoint me." As soon as the words fell, everyone looked respectful and shouted, "As you command." The sound was deafening, resounding throughout heaven and earth. The void could no longer bear the momentum of the sound and began to slowly break. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 134. Only a few days later. The guardian elders of Soul Palace and Shadow Palace began to spread throughout the central territory like a flood. Everywhere he went, all the forces suffered and were firmly controlled by the Shadow Palace and the Soul Palace. Even some half-emperor forces were invaded by the Soul Palace and Shadow Palace. Relying on his own strong strength, he instantly became the person in power inside. But there is a kind of force that they still dare not touch for the time being. They were also warned by Soul Demon and Shadow Demon. As long as they are related to Tiangong, they must not be touched, because they do not have the strength to dare to provoke Tiangong yet. As long as one powerful martial emperor is sent out, it will be enough to overwhelm the Second Palace. Because of the unscrupulous spread of the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace, the total number of subordinates the guardian elders of the Second Palace have reached tens of thousands. There are countless martial sovereign and Wuzong experts among them. Some people discovered that whenever they passed through a city or other places, there would be groups of strong men in black robes walking around, as if they were patrolling something. Without exception, their own strength has reached the Wuzong realm. No one dared to go up and ask, because the person who asked had been tortured to death. There were also passionate young people who came to stop, but these had no effect, they were all killed. This approach naturally attracted the attention of some top forces. They sent their disciples to arrest these black-robed men. Although the arrest process went smoothly, the final result was horrific. Some people discovered that as long as the successful forces went to arrest the black-robed man, they would turn into ruins in less than a day. Looking up, they would see rivers of blood and bones all over the ground. This approach has made some forces afraid. Although there are winners, they will die in the end, and even in the end it will lead to a battle between half-emperors, but the strong half-emperors will have no effect. When encountering such a strong person, the master of the second hall will kill him personally. Kill. For a long time, whenever someone encounters a person wearing a black robe in the city, they will wave to him respectfully to show their loyalty. At this time, the two soul demons and shadow demons were standing on the top of a mountain with their hands behind their hands. The place was surrounded by clouds and the trees were green. The reason why this place is so beautiful is because the ruler here is the heavenly palace. No one dares to be arrogant in the heavenly palace. Behind the two of them, there were several figures standing respectfully. They are all protectors of the Soul Palace and Shadow Palace, and each of them has reached the level of Martial Venerable, and the strongest one has even reached the level of Martial Saint. I saw their eyes looking at the heavenly palace above the clouds, and a sneer appeared on their faces under the masks. One day, the heavenly palace will also surrender under their feet. Guyuntian and Guyunfen, who were behind the two of them, couldn't help but feel stunned by what the second palace had done in the past few days. It is true that the influence of the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace is too great. In just a few days, the influence of the Second Palace has begun to spread throughout the central region. It is true to the saying, no crickets are left behind when crossing the border. Even some martial saint and half-emperor level forces began to be secretly controlled by the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace. They all became their slaves, and what the Second Palace did was to control these forces and make them the eyes on the bright side of the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace. And they are watching in secret. Every Soul Palace disciple and guardian elder has matching skills. Even if his own strength is lower than others, he can still escape from the hands of a strong person with a high level. You can escape if your strength is not too high. Say it. I saw the emperor's palace above the clouds. Li Xiun sat on the throne, looking down with phoenix eyes, a pair of white and slender jade legs exposed. I saw the center of the hall. 5 figures in white robes stood there respectfully with their heads lowered. No one dared to raise their eyes to look. If anyone from the outside sect saw this scene, they would be shocked, because these 5 people are all the heads of different forces at the emperor level. They never thought that they would surrender to the Tiangong. Li Xiun looked at the 5 people with his eyes, opened his red lips slightly, and said, I have asked you to come here because I have a matter to entrust you with. I believe you can solve it easily with your strength. Upon hearing this, the eyes of the 5 figures burned. It was as if it was a great honor for Li Xiun to let them complete things. He quickly bowed his hands respectfully. But Li Xiun did not explain it directly to them. Instead, he took a roundabout way and said, have you heard about the Profound Heaven sect that made such a splash in the 5 domains competition this time? I heard it, the 5 people nodded. Of course they have heard of it, because their disciples were crippled by the bloodthirsty Profound Heaven sect. How could they not know? They happened to be looking for trouble. Then you have also heard the news that the disciples sent by our Tiangong died in the Tianqian secret realm this time, right? The 5 people looked at each other with doubts on their faces. They didn't know why the master of the White House said this, but they still nodded. Seeing the confused expressions on the 5 people's faces, Li Xiun explained, the reason why my Tiangong disciple got involved this time is because my strength and skills are not as good as others, and I was killed by the disciples of Profound Heaven sect. Hearing this, the 5 people looked startled. Profound Heaven sect is not wrong. Their own strength and skills are inferior to others and they were killed by them. However, this does not blame them. Our disciples of Heavenly Palace are weak and it is normal for them to be killed. But one thing we need to know is that these people are the disciples of our Heavenly Palace, so this matter must be resolved no matter what, otherwise where is the majesty of our Heavenly Palace? Having said this, Li Xiun's expression began to darken. He looked at the 5 people and said, so what you are asked to do this time is to kill all the people in Profound Heaven sect without leaving any room for them. Do you understand? The 5 people nodded quickly without any hesitation. They happened to be looking for trouble with Profound Heaven sect, and this matter turned out to be what they wanted. Seeing this scene, Li Xiun's brows relaxed. He waved to everyone. Back off. Seeing this, everyone bowed their hands respectfully and retreated. Seeing the 5 people walking out of the hall, Li Xiun stood up, his robe fluttering slightly, his white and slender jade legs barely visible, and a pair of beautiful phoenix eyes looking out of the hall. I want to see how powerful your newly emerged Profound Heaven sect is. Since you have angered my Heavenly Palace, you will have to bear the consequences, Li Xiun said in a cold voice with an indifferent expression. At this point, 4 dark black beads appeared in her hand. If Yun Fengji saw this scene, she would be shocked, because these 4 beads are all beast beads without exception. Beast beads are not spiritual stones, so they are difficult to find, but Li Xiun has 4 of them. Looking at the beast bead in his hand, Li Xiun smiled slightly and then put it away. Say it. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 135. I saw the 5 people returning to their respective forces and families. Prepare to call on the strong men in your own power to quickly eliminate Profound Heaven sect and others, and let them be buried in the central realm forever. This time the Heavenly Palace did not send any strong men. So why didn't Tiangong send the elders themselves? That's because today's Heavenly Palace, as a first-class force in the Profound Heaven continent, has extremely high prestige. Every word and deed of the famous and powerful men in the Heavenly Palace will be under the watchful eye of major forces. They will not take action unless absolutely necessary. Some things are not easy to do in the Heavenly Palace, so they will send strong men from the dark forces to go. Many people know this very well, and the major forces also know it very well. Almost anyone who is smart can understand it. Therefore, they rarely resist when they encounter the oppression of Tiangong. As long as their bottom line is not touched, they will endure it again and again. After all, no one wants their tens of thousands of years of sect to be destroyed like this. The 20 martial emperors on the surface are rarely sent out by the powerful Tiangong. When trouble occurs, almost all the forces they support secretly are dispatched to solve it. Some dirty and tiring things will be left to them, and this matter is no exception. They never resist, but enjoy it. Shadow Palace and Soul Palace were not aware of any actions of Tiangong Palace, but the forces related to Tiangong Palace were noticed by the powerful ones from Soul Palace and Shadow Palace. I saw a dark cave. A man wearing a black robe and a cold face stood there quietly. The evil spirit is raging here and it's extremely dark. From time to time, a large number of poisonous snakes and scorpions will appear in the darkness of the surrounding walls, and a large amount of demonic energy will also erupt. But as soon as these demonic energies get close to a man, they will turn into wisps of flying smoke. In the man's eyes, these demonic energies are like ordinary air. This is also the reason for his strength. If other people come here, they will be poisoned and die due to the large amount of demonic energy in a few breaths. Click, 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 click. A space crack appeared in the devil's cave without any warning. I saw a man wearing a black robe and a ghost mask walking out of them. I saw the man in black robe scanning his surroundings until he saw the man in robe standing right in front. Seeing this scene, the man in black robe flashed his eyes and stepped towards the man in robe. Every step, dong dong dong. The ground will shake slowly. The gravel in the devil's cave will also fall down because of this. The man in black robe is the guardian of the Shadow Palace, and his own strength is close to semi-saint. The man in the robe above has reached the level of martial arts in the saint realm. Hearing the footsteps coming from the devil's cave, the man in robe looked at the black-robed protector with his eyes wide open. The latter looked respectful, knelt on one knee on the ground, lowered his head and cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Mr. Ying Yi." Hearing this, Ying Yi looked at him and nodded, "Get up. What do you have to confess?" After hearing Ying Yi's question, the man in black robe quickly replied, "Sir, this is what happened." After half a stick of incense, Ying narrowed his eyes slightly, frowned, and said, "You mean that Tiangong didn't take any action, but instead the powerful sects related to Tiangong did?" "That's right," the man in black robe nodded. "My subordinates have sent people to observe carefully and found that all these forces are beginning to integrate their own disciples. Even the disciples outside have been called back. Therefore, my subordinates guess that there must be something big happening in these matters. So please Ying Yi, please pay attention to this matter at all times." Hearing this, Ying Yi raised his brows, nodded and said, "Don't worry, as long as the news is true, I will pay close attention to it at all times, but I will report the matter to the palace master first, and let him come up with a way to deal with it. I believe that if nothing unexpected happens, Tiangong should be preparing to take action against us." However, this time they did not take action themselves. Instead, they asked the forces they secretly supported to take action. They only waited for the action to give us a chance. At least they would not so powerless. "Oh, that's right," Ying Yi seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Have you found out what kind of powerful people they will send to attack?" Hearing this, the man in black robe shook his head. "I don't know, but one thing is certain, this time someone with the highest strength of emperor level will take action." Ying Yi glanced at him and nodded slightly. Then he waved to him. "You should step back first." Seeing this, the man in black robe backed away, and his figure disappeared instantly. Looking at the disappearing back of the man in black robe, Ying's eyes flickered slightly, he glanced around and then disappeared. The scene changes. I saw a dignified and majestic hall. 5 figures with powerful auras gathered here. Even the void couldn't bear the faint aura and started to tremble slightly. Everyone's expression is serious. The 5 of them were the 5 people who were in the Tiangong Emperor's palace that day. Their identities were the heads of families controlled by Emperor-level forces. Disciples of the clan, have you all gathered together? A middle-aged man with a majestic face and half-white hair looked at the 4 of them and said. When the 4 of them heard this, they looked at each other and nodded slightly. You can rest assured. We have already ordered the descendants of the clan to gather all the disciples in the clan. Now we are waiting outside. We only need to wait for the order from the Lord of the Palace, and we can destroy the profound heaven section above this world. As soon as these words came out, the middle-aged man smiled and shook his head and said, there is no need to report it to the palace master. The palace master has already given me the information. This task is all decided by the 5 of us. The people in Tiangong will participate. After the words fell, everyone's eyes flashed slightly and they nodded slowly. By the way, there is one more thing I want to tell you. The middle-aged man seemed to have thought of something and said. What's the matter? The 4 asked with doubts on their faces. The middle-aged man looked at the crowd and said, did you know that a strange strength has emerged in China recently? They all appear in major cities and forces wearing black robes and black clothes. From time to time, there will be forces destroyed by them. Of course I've heard about it, a long-haired old man with an old face said, this group of forces is extremely powerful. I also sent people to inspect it and found that this force called Soul Palace only appeared a few days ago. But in my opinion, the potential of this force is no worse than that of Profound Heaven Sect, because it took them a few days to spread their influence throughout the Central Territory. But fortunately, they did not take action against forces like us, but took great action against other forces and turned them into puppets that they can control. Hearing the old man's answer, the middle-aged man shook his head and said, this is the Soul Palace you are talking about, and I know of another force called the Shadow Palace. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 136. Shadow Palace. The old man looked slightly confused. He had been paying attention when he first appeared in the Soul Palace. He sent people to observe carefully for a long time but did not find any other forces. He had never heard of the Shadow Palace that the middle-aged man was talking about. Looking at the old man's puzzled expression, the middle-aged man said, is it possible that you haven't heard about the Shadow Palace? Hearing this, the old man shook his head, no, I only found the Soul Palace. As for the Shadow Palace, I haven't heard of it at all. What about you? Seeing the old man shaking his head, the middle-aged man turned his head and looked at the other people. When the other people heard this, some nodded, while others shook their heads. Having said this, the middle-aged man thought for a while and said, that must be another situation. Perhaps it is because of the distribution of their power that some people have heard of it and some have not. Then, he looked at the crowd and said, have you noticed that these two forces are strange? The Soul Palace and Shadow Palace only attack other forces, but not forces like us. Instead, they go to those forces that have no background. Another point is that they will never take action against the forces that have a relationship with Tiangong. They will forcefully avoid them every time they meet. After hearing this, everyone couldn't help but wonder. After thinking about it, they found that it was indeed the case. Is it possible that these forces belong to the Profound Heaven Sect? A man in a white robe stood up and said after seeing this scene. The middle-aged man glanced at him and frowned. The others didn't say anything when they saw this. After thinking for a long time, the middle-aged man slowly said, let's not worry about whether the Soul Palace and Shadow Palace are the forces behind Profound Heaven Sect. The main thing this time is to get rid of the profound heaven section. If the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace dare to interfere, then we will eradicate him together to avoid having to deal with them later. What do you think? The middle-aged man looked at the four of them. The four of them looked at each other and nodded slightly. Of course we don't have any objections. Seeing this, the middle-aged man smiled. Well, without further ado, I would like to trouble you all to lead your clan disciples to meet in Wuchen. After hearing this, the four people nodded, and their figures turned into a trace of bubbles and disappeared from the place. Looking at the place where the four people disappeared, the middle-aged man shouted to the door, "Here comes someone." The words have fallen. Then a young man wearing a white shirt with a cold face walked in. He knelt down on one knee, raised his hands to the middle-aged man and said, "Master." The middle-aged man looked at this man and said, "Immediately send all the people in the clan who have reached the martial sovereign level to Wuchen." Hearing this, the young man's eyes froze, and he nodded without saying anything. "As you command." "Say it." "Wuchen." I saw hundreds of spirit boats parked in the sky, with countless figures standing on the spirit boats, including men, women, and elderly people. Everyone stood looking down with serious expressions. Wuchen, which was obviously crowded with people not long ago, has now become a deserted place with no one in sight. The reason why they are not here is because they all received the message. It was the 5 major forces who led the clansmen and came to Wuchen with great momentum. There were countless strong men among them. This is the news they received, so Wuchen is now deserted. In mid-air, the people of the 5 major forces exuded strong murderous intent, and the murderous intent rushed into the sky. Dark clouds began to spread in an instant, and the originally clear sky turned dark in an instant. The disciples of all the clans of the 5 major forces have reached the lowest level of martial sovereign, and the highest level has even reached the half-emperor level. And the 5 patriarchs have not shown up now? And the iron sons of all clans are also waiting for their family leader to give orders. And in the palace courtyard at this time, all the profound heaven sect disciples and elders were standing on the steps paved with blue stone. I saw 2 figures standing directly in front of them. It was Ling and Xiao Ran. The 2 of them had already noticed the strong murderous intent in the air, and the terrifying aura released from time to time was enough to make them look embarrassed. Ling looked up into the sky with a sad look on his face, shook his head and sighed, "What should come has finally come." Then, he looked at the crowd and said, "I believe you all feel the killing intent." Everyone nodded. "I feel it, Elder Ling. Are we going to die?" Guang Qian asked weakly. Hearing this, Ling glanced at him and asked, "Do you think we will die?" "This." Guang Gan looked hesitant and shook his head, I don't know." Seeing this, Ling chuckled lightly, did not speak, but looked at the others. They found that except for the elders, only Bloodthirsty and Yun Fengji's expressions remained calm, as if the many powerful men in the air were just clouds in their eyes, which did not make them afraid at all. Seeing this scene, Ling couldn't help but admire the 2 of them. High in the sky. Click, 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 click. I saw a 10-meter-long space crack suddenly opening. The space turbulence that makes one feel the aura of death is constantly swimming in mid-air. 5 powerful figures walked out among them, and they were the heads of the 5 major families. At this moment, their own emperor-level strength is no longer hidden, they are released without any scruples. With just one release, the terrifying breath was enough to make everyone in the courtyard feel suffocated and start to lose their breath. Seeing this situation, Ling looked at Xiao Ran beside him and asked, "Can that shield still be used?" Hearing this, Xiao Ran glanced at him helplessly, spread his hands and said, "No, the 5 regions competition has passed long ago, and the shield will not be retained for a long time. It is already considered good for us to live here." Seeing this, Ling sighed, and then his expression instantly became calm and he looked at the 5 people in the sky. Look at each other without any sign of weakness. When the 5 people saw this, their expressions showed a trace of amusement. They have never seen a person with the strength of Martial Venerable dare to look directly at them with the strength of Martial Emperor. No matter how tragic their death was today, their courage alone was worthy of their admiration. But it's just admiration. I saw the deist figure among the 5 people waving his hands. A huge palm like the sky appeared in mid-air, pointing directly at the people in the courtyard. The people below suddenly felt a shadow enveloping them, and looked up to the sky. What is this? It looks so scary, a female disciple said with a frightened expression. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 137. Shue, who was next to the female disciple, heard the voice and glanced at her with a look of disdain on his face. He didn't feel any fear because of this. Although the giant hand of the sky towers above their heads. But everyone in Profound Heaven Sect did not choose to flee because of this, but stood quietly watching this scene. This approach caused the spellcaster in the sky to look confused and puzzled. It seems that they don't understand why everyone didn't run away. Seeing this, the caster murmured, could it be that they have given up on life and death? It's interesting that they don't run away. When the other 4 people in front of him heard this, they looked slightly confused. Perhaps they feel that they can't escape anymore, so they might as well stand there and wait to die, an old man pondered for a moment and said. Hearing this, the caster glanced at him without saying anything, looked at the people below, with a cold face, and coldly snorted, no matter what your reasons are, if you don't run away, you will all turn into meat pies. This death will be pleasant and won't cause you any pain. The words have fallen. Boom. I saw the giant hand in the sky falling downwards like a meteorite, aiming directly at the people of Profound Heaven Sect. The breath released by the giant hand in the sky crushed the nearby void into pieces, and the void collapsed directly. When the caster sees this, he directly uses the power of the law. Then I saw that there was a trace of space aura attached to the giant hands of the sky. With the chaotic aura of space and the giant hands of the sky, even the invincible Martial Emperor of the same level would be injured here, let alone everyone in the Profound Heaven Sect. At this time, when the disciples of Profound Heaven Sect saw this scene, everyone began to look scared and panicked. Leng, the leader, frowned and held a space orb tightly in his palm, as if he was preparing to strike with his giant hand in the sky. The moment he fell, he led everyone to escape from here. Even Lei Wuxian, Qi Kui and others who were hiding in the void began to look nervous. He shouted anxiously in his heart, Chuyu, take action quickly. Chuyu seemed to feel the words of several people. Only in the distance. Chuyu, wearing a black robe, appeared under the giant hand without any warning. I saw him move his figure and wave his hand, and the giant hand as huge as a meteorite stayed in mid-air, unable to fall even a bit. It seems to be directly controlled. Seeing this scene, the person who cast the spell was shocked. Called, who is this person? He can actually block my heaven-shattering palm. The other 4 people frowned when they saw this, as if they sensed that this person was unusual and felt a sense of threat. The person who showed up was Chuyu, the powerful Martial Emperor sent by Qin Xian. Chuyu's eyes narrowed, and he saw that the giant hand in the sky began to slowly change, aiming at the 5 of them. The person who cast the spell just now felt that he had lost the ability to control the giant hand, and quickly looked up. I found that Chuyu was saying some spell with his eyes closed, and saw that the giant hand in the sky began to transform. In less than a breath, the giant hand in the sky turned into a palm with shining golden light. Then he attacked the 5 people. Seeing this, the caster quickly moved to resist, as if he wanted to resist this palm. But can it really be blocked? Boom. I saw that the person who cast the spell was knocked back several meters away before he even touched his palm. After coughing a few times, the caster swallowed a pill and realized that he could not resist this palm. With a movement of his body, He immediately appeared in front of the other 4 people. Looking at the golden palm rushing towards him, the caster was puzzled. He didn't understand at all how the giant hand in the sky, which he had clearly cast, became out of his control after being injected with Chuyu's law. But it was just a trace of confusion. He looked at his palm and used the same giant hand in the sky again. "I want to see the difference between your move and mine," the caster shouted. The words have fallen. The two collided together instantly. Boom! I saw a blazing golden light emitting in the mid-air. The void could not withstand the huge energy of the two and began to shatter. The turbulence of space instantly appeared in the mid-air. Seeing this, Chuyu, who was below, turned cold, and his figure appeared in front of him. Before the man could speak, several spirit swords appeared in front of Chuyu, but he did not control the spirit swords to attack. Instead, he rushed forward with an indifferent expression, aimed at the person who cast the spell, and delivered an earth-shattering punch every day. Boom! Punch out! Boom! Boom! The person who cast the spell didn't react in time and directly withstood the blow, swallowed a mouthful of blood and took a few steps back. Feeling this strength, the caster had no time to recover from his injuries. He looked at Chuyu and said in shock, "You are actually at the low-level peak of the Martial Emperor. Doesn't it mean that your sect does not have a strong Martial Emperor? His own strength is only Martial Emperor low-level late stage, no wonder he can control his giant hand in the sky." Thinking of this, he quickly stepped back. There was a huge gap in the Emperor realm before. Even a small realm couldn't make up for it. It was difficult to cross a higher level. Only people with good physique could have the strength to cross a higher level, but he didn't. He retreated directly to a few people and prepared to deal with Chuyu with them. The man who cast the spell looked at the 4 people and said, "This person's strength has reached the low-level peak of the Martial Emperor. I'm afraid I can't deal with him alone. To be on the safe side, let's go up and deal with him together." Hearing this, the 4 of them looked at each other, nodded, and did not refuse. After all, Chuyu had threatened them. Afterwards, several people looked directly at Chuyu. His own aura burst out with all his strength, and the power of the law ran wildly. The figures of several people appeared in front of him in an instant, and they started fighting without any room for conversation. Heaven-suppressing palm. I saw an old man's figure appearing on Chuyu's left side, all his spiritual power gathered, and he shouted loudly. A crack appeared in the void, and a black palm attacked Chuyu with a thunderous force. Before Chuyu could resist, another voice came. "Destroy all dharmas." I saw dozens of phantom men whose faces could not be seen instantly appear on the right side of Chuyu. The phantoms were shining with golden light and rushing over with strong murderous intent. But it's not over yet. Directly in front of him, he saw 3 deist figures standing there, and the aura emanating from their bodies made people shudder. I saw 3 people releasing the power of the law and shouted. "The sword breaks the great wall. Eternal flood in the void. The storm is shattered. Boom boom boom." 3 terrifying energy auras rushed towards Chuyu. These 5 moves are all Emperor rank skills that outsiders can constantly compete for, and they are also the secret skills that the 5 of them have learned throughout their lives. The 5 of them work together to prepare a single blow to kill Chuyu here. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 138. Seeing the 5 people using powerful martial arts to attack him, Chuyu was not afraid, his face was calm, and he did not feel panic because the 5 people joined hands. On the contrary, Profound Heaven Sect and others in the courtyard saw the scene and couldn't help but secretly sweat for Chuyu. I shouted in my heart, "You must hold on." Xiao Ran, who was sitting on the table and chair, saw the scene and murmured with his hands behind his hands, "I don't know if he can withstand the siege of 5 strong martial emperors. I hope your strength still surprises me." I saw the terrifying moves of the 5 people hitting Chuyu, and there was a roar instantly. Boom! Dust and smoke are everywhere, and the void is shattered. Countless spatial turbulence appeared, and fiery shattering sounds continued. The 5 people took a breath and looked at the scene with indifferent expressions. It seemed that Chuyu was destined to be wiped out under their attack. There is no possibility of survival. But, is that really the case? Is this all you have? You are too weak. A voice rang in the ears of the 5 people. It was not loud, but it hit their hearts. His expression suddenly changed. He took a few steps back and looked at Chuyu in the dust and smoke in disbelief. Whoosh! I saw a black shadow instantly appear in front of the 5 people. It was Chuyu. His robe showed no signs of damage, as if the attack just now did not touch him. I saw several spiritual swords surrounding him, and the spiritual swords exuded a dark light. The next moment, several spiritual swords seemed to have eyes, attacking directly at the 5 people. Bang bang bang. Chuyu also hit everyone who was resisting the spirit sword at this time. His own law system kept rushing towards everyone, and everyone resisted. With every collision, the surrounding void began to slowly break because it could not bear it. It took half a full time to burn the incense before I stopped. At this time, the 5 people had a look of fear on their faces, gasping from time to time, and a trace of cold sweat broke out. The battle between the spirit swords just now had already injured everyone. This was just the attack of the spirit swords. Chuyu hadn't made a move yet. From this point of view, if he made a move, his people would die directly because they couldn't stop it. The 5 of them were starting to feel a little weak in their legs, but because they were the clan leader, they also wanted to save face. If they escaped in such a mess, how could they have the face to face everyone and their own disciples? This is to save face and suffer. And on the spirit boat behind the 5 people. When all the clan disciples saw the embarrassing scene of their clan, they exclaimed in surprise and confusion. They really didn't understand why the clan leader of their clan didn't kill the man in black robe, but was killed by him instead. One person was hit so hard that he couldn't even lift his head. It seems that if the fight continues, 5 people will die. Isn't the clan leader's strength reached that of the martial emperor? How could he not be able to defeat this person? Aren't the other clan leaders also there? Why can't he be defeated? What is going on? A clan disciple made a confused sound. Question. Several people around him also heard it. 1 spreads it to 10, and 10 spreads it to 100, just like that it spreads throughout the entire spirit boat. There was constant discussion in the venue. There are doubts, beliefs, and disappointments. Listening to the noise behind them, the 5 of them looked helpless. There is a big gap between their strength and Chuyu. In the martial emperor realm world, every section is extremely difficult to overcome. The most powerful among them is the man who just made the move, and the rest are all at the early to mid-level of the martial emperor. But it can be made up for, using more people to defeat fewer people. The combined strength of the 5 of them can give them a fight with a mid-level martial emperor, but in the current situation, they are indeed being suppressed by Chuyu. Seeing the embarrassed figures of the 5 people, Chuyu took action again. I saw the aura of law around him constantly twisting, and the next moment, a shadow of a man who was 89 similar to him appeared behind him. The shadow's eyes glowed, and then he waved his hands, and a red-yellow-golden ball was aimed at the 5 people. The golden light was raging, and its own fiery golden light had already illuminated the faces of the 5 people. Swish! Seeing this, the 5 people hurriedly set out to prepare for it. The power of their own laws kept waving, and then, the 5 people joined forces, and all the power of laws turned into a shield, directly blocking the incoming ball. The ball collided with the shield in an instant. The 5 people could not stop it and were repelled again. This time they were hit directly on the ground. Directly smash a 10-mile radius into a cave. Fortunately, no one lives here, otherwise someone would die innocently. I saw the cave. The 5 people were covered in their own blood, half kneeling on the ground, looking at Chuyu with a hint of fear. Everyone in the Profound Heaven sect located in the courtyard saw that Chuyu blocked the joint attack of the 5 people, and directly used his ultimate move to seriously injure the 5 people, leaving them unable to get up and take action again. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. When Xiaoran saw this scene, he sighed slightly. The strong martial emperor sent by the sect master is indeed no ordinary person. His record of 1 against 5 is enough to be considered brilliant. I believe it won't be long before his name will be resounding in the Central Territory. Seeing the 5 people lying in a pool of blood, Chuyu's expression did not change at all from the beginning to the end. He did not feel that he was arrogant in a one-on-one fight. Instead, he is always vigilant. He is afraid that the elders of Tiangong will suddenly take action at this time. I checked carefully and found that it was not there, and I was slightly relieved. Then, his eyes looked at all the clan disciples in the hundreds of spirit boats in mid-air. At this time, the clan disciples on the spirit boat saw that their clan leader was beaten to the ground by Chuyu, without any resistance. His expression began to become panicked, and he no longer had the seriousness and fiery fighting spirit he had at the beginning. Everyone is starting to get scared. Seeing Chuyu's eyes looking here, everyone's expressions showed a trace of fear, and they couldn't help but take half a step back. The other leaders of the 5 major clans didn't know what to say when they saw this scene. They themselves were afraid, let alone others. Profound Heaven Sect. In the main hall, Qin Xian naturally saw this scene, and couldn't help but nod in admiration. He is worthy of being summoned by the system. His 1-on-5 record here is enough to stand out from the crowd, and it is equivalent to completing half of the task. Afterwards, Chuyu did not attack the hundreds of spirit boats, but appeared in front of the 5 people in the cave. Seeing the expressions of the 5 people, Chuyu moved and directly used the power of law to kill them directly. Seeing this, the 5 people immediately resisted, but unfortunately, their resistance had no effect at all. Within a few breaths, the expressions of the 5 people began to become painful, as if they were experiencing something terrible. After another half-quarter of an hour, the 5 people turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared. Only their clothes remained. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 139. However, Chuyu did not look happy at this time, but instead frowned. Because in his perception, he did not feel that the 5 people were dead, but that they seemed to have used some treasure to escape from here. Looking at the exposed robes of the 5 people, Chuyu fell into deep thought. When everyone in the Profound Heaven sect located in the courtyard saw Chuyu defeating the 5 people, they immediately set off and walked in front of him. Seeing that Chuyu did not say hello to them, but kept looking at the robes in the cave. Seeing this, Ling and Xiaoran walked over on their feet. Looking at the scene in front of him, Ling seemed to know what was going on. His eyes flashed and he said, "If it's not what I expected, they should have used the Jade Cicada to escape." Jade Cicada? Hearing the name, Chuyu turned to look at him. After thinking for a while, he seemed to know the role of the Jade Cicada, and sighed and said, "That would be a pity, otherwise the heavenly palace would definitely bleed." Xiaoran on the side didn't say anything when he saw this. Instead, he looked at the hundreds of spirit boats in the sky and said to Chuyu, "It's not a pity. Although the 5 of them escaped, their clan disciples have not yet escaped. Leaving them here can also make the heavenly palace bleed." Hearing this, Chuyu glanced directly at the people in the sky, his eyes gradually became colder, and he nodded and said, "In that case, let them stay here today." Chuyu has no intention of being soft-hearted. The words have fallen. Only high in the sky. In the sky above the spirit boat, a huge hand appeared in front of everyone. The terrifying aura emanating from the giant hand made everyone's eyes reveal a trace of despair, and they couldn't even think of any resistance in their hearts. Next moment, the giant hand pressed down and directly shattered all the spirit boats. Hundreds of spirit boats instantly turned into pieces. It turned into a wisp of ashes and scattered between the sky and the earth, including everyone on the spirit boat. Thousands of miles away, 5 wretched figures appeared here. Seeing hundreds of spirit boats disappearing like dust in front of me, knowing that all the clan disciples I brought with me were dead, I couldn't help but let out a cry of grief in my heart. It was a heartbreaking feeling. You know, their descendants and descendants are all in it, and there are also people who can become martial emperors. As a result, they are all dead now, and the hard work they have cultivated for generations is gone. The 5 of them all wanted to die. Watchin'. Seeing the spirit boat that existed just now being shattered by a single blow, the disciples couldn't help but feel dreamy. Obviously just now they were suppressed by 5 people, but now they were beaten and fled. The disciples looked at the figure in front of them, showing respect on their faces. Chuyu naturally felt it, but he didn't say anything. Afterwards, everyone no longer stayed in Wuchen, but went to the residence of Seoul Palace. Everyone left nothing but a fingerprint of a huge hand, which also firmly marked the victory of 1 against 5. And in the future, Chuyu fought against 5 martial emperors alone, and the news of his victory spread like a strong wind to the entire Profound Heaven continent. Everyone knows Chuyu's name and identity. Until now, major forces have finally begun to look at Profound Heaven Sect and are more wary of Profound Heaven Sect. Heavenly Palace. In the splendid Imperial Palace, Li Ziun looked cold and sat on the throne. There were 3 old men standing below her. These 3 people are Yi Feng, Chu Xian and Yan Cheng. At this time, the 3 of them were hunched over and did not dare to breathe, because they knew that Li Ziun was on the verge of getting angry. The reason for his anger was the news that Chuyu fought against 5 martial emperors alone. In fact, they did not expect that Profound Heaven Sect, which had just risen not long ago, would actually have another strong man at the martial emperor level, and he was also invincible at the same level. Forget about the ordinary martial emperor, but invincible at the same level. The martial emperor is different. He is a first-class strong man, and he will eventually grow to at least the peak of the martial emperor. Looking at the nervous bodies of the 3 great ministers, Li Ziun relaxed his brows and said coldly, "This is really good news for me. 5 martial emperors couldn't beat him. 1 martial emperor was suppressed the whole time. Damn, I really don't know what kind of trash my Tiangong has cultivated. I gave them so many cultivation resources, but the final news they brought to me was like this." Hearing this, the 3 of them shuddered, did not speak, and stood quietly. Li Ziun took a breath, looked at the 3 of them and said, "Those 5 people are not dead yet, are they?" The 3 of them looked at each other and nodded, then raised their hands to Li Ziun and replied, reporting to the palace master, "The 5 elders did not really die, but used Jade Cicada to escape from Chuyu. However, the injuries to the 5 of them were extremely severe this time. All the disciples of my clan were killed, and no one survived." Hearing this, Li Ziun just snorted coldly. "They really have the nerve to live." Sighing, he added, "But the good thing is that they went to find trouble with their own power, instead of bringing my Tiangong's name with them. Otherwise, I am afraid that our Tiangong will be ridiculed by many forces in this incident, and our Tiangong's face will be greatly reduced because of this." The 3rd elder didn't dare to speak, so he just listened. Li Ziun closed his eyes, sighed slightly, then looked at the 3 of them and said, "But this matter is also a miscalculation of this palace. I thought that a powerhouse that had just risen not long ago did not have the power of the martial emperor, but it turned out that this Profound Heaven section gave me a big surprise. It has the strong martial emperor, which means that it has a higher level strong person behind it, so I decided to put this matter aside for the time being, and wait until I am free in the future to find him in person. Trouble. Seeing this, the three elders nodded without refuting or persuading. At this point, Li Ziun seemed to feel a little tired. He remembered that the three of them waved and said, "Okay, I'm tired, you can step back first." "I obey, Palace Master." The three of them bowed their hands and retreated. After the three people left, Li Ziun's expression recovered, his eyes showed a hint of hidden murderous intent, and a token appeared in Kinkinyu's hand. I saw the big character written on the token. If anyone who knows things sees this, they will be shocked. Because the effect of this token is really great, it can mobilize the ancient beasts living in the token. If you encounter something you can't deal with, you can use this thing. It's true that I don't want to trouble you, but I have to teach you a lesson. Otherwise, where is the face of my Tiangong? Li Ziun sneered. Say it. Profound Heaven Sect, in the majestic hall. Qin Xian's entire body was seen floating in the air of the main hall, as if the main hall had become one with him. Boom boom boom. The power of law around Qin Xian keeps wandering around. After half a breath, Qin Xian opened his eyes. He yelled, "Get up!" Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 140. The words just fell. I saw dozens of tens of thousands of mountains in the profound heaven sect rising directly from the ground, all floating in the mid-air. At this time, when the disciples in the Zongmen Square saw this scene, they couldn't help but turn pale with fright. They quickly went to report to the elders, wondering if someone strong was coming. But it was just a false alarm. Qin Xian has already told the elders that if anyone panics, all your disciples must tell him. Therefore, the law enforcement elders will appear from time to time. What's going on? Why is the sect floating in mid-air? A man asked, talking to the people next to him. The person next to him shook his head and said, "I don't know. The shock just now scared me. I thought someone was coming." There were countless whispers in the Zongmen Square, and everyone's facial expressions showed a trace of doubt and confusion. Until then, an old man in a green robe came to the square and coughed heavily. Ahem. Hearing the sound of coughing, everyone looked around quickly and found the figure of the old man. The more careful disciples immediately knew who he was and said quickly, "I remembered, this person is the law enforcement elder Suemo with his own strength, reached half-saint realm." Seeing this, everyone quickly stood up and bowed, "Greetings to the law enforcement elder. I am not here, but do you have any instructions?" But the old man in green robe did not reply directly to him. He just nodded slightly, then looked at everyone and said, "You don't need to panic. I believe you have all seen the current situation of the section. This matter was done by the sect leader. The reason why this is so is because the Lord of the sect has heard your inner thoughts. Didn't you say that you really want to go to the Central Territory? Now the Lord of the sect has given you the opportunity to start moving away from the profound heaven sect. There is no need to panic too much. Just wait slowly. When the time comes, the sect leader will use the power of law to take us to the central region, so you only need to do what you should do, and there is no need to worry about other things." Hearing the words of the old man in green robe, he nodded repeatedly without any rebuttal. The words have fallen. I saw two disciples in white robes talking to each other. When the conversation was almost over, he turned to the old man in green robe and asked immediately, Elder, I wonder if what you said is true. Does the sect master really want to take us to the Central Territory? Can I still lie to you?" The old man in green robe glared at the man and asked. No, how could the elder lie to us?" The person who asked quickly waved his hand and laughed. Snort. The old man in green robe snorted coldly, and then he returned to his residence with a flick of his sleeves. After everyone saw the old man leaving, they started talking again. The most talked about thing is how good the central region is. Not only are there many top geniuses, but there are also many top powerhouses and so on. Boom. The entire profound heaven sect suddenly shook and began to shake. Suddenly, all I saw was mid-air. A colorful spiritual bead floats high in the sky. It exudes an aura of terror and mystery. Qin Xian in the main hall also opened his eyes at this time and appeared in front of the spirit bead. Looking at the spirit bead, Qin Xian's palm shook and he began to wave. He saw that the power of law controlled by Qin Xian continued to inject it fiercely into the spirit bead. The next moment, the bead slowly turned into a vortex, and the entire sect was sucked into it instantly. This thing is the realm, exactly what I drew before. I originally thought it was useless, but it turned out that this task created by the system just met this need. Qin Xian has already made plans to move to the central territory. There is no room for development in the Sky Empire. Only the central territory can allow profound heaven sect to grow rapidly. Seeing this, Qin Xian held the spirit bead in his hand, and a space passage appeared in front of him. Then Qin Xian glanced at this place, chuckled, and walked into it without hesitation. The space is closed. Zhongyao. A quiet place where birds are singing and flowers are fragrant, 7 tall and steep peaks stand tall and steep, reaching into the sky. The 7 tall peaks are like giant pillars reaching the sky. The peaks are slowly surrounded by clouds, making it difficult for people to see their true appearance. They can only see the 7 flickering boulders from a distance. The 7 peaks are also called the 7 sacred peaks. It is said that 7 top geniuses were born here in the past. After hundreds of years of hard work, they finally became the top experts of martial saint one by one, and also left their legends in the central region, so this place is also known by the world. It's the 7 sacred peaks. Then, a huge space crack appeared out of thin air among the 7 peaks. Click, 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 click. A man wearing a mysterious robe, with a handsome face, and exuding a terrifying aura walked out. This person is Qin Xian. He had never been to the central territory, so he didn't have a designated place, so he just used his strength to find it. Looking at the 7 huge peaks around him, Qin Dian raised his eyebrows and murmured, "Where is this place?" Not only is the environment beautiful, but the spiritual energy is also so abundant. This is where my profound heaven sect deserves to be stationed. Then, Qin Xian smiled again. Then he took out the beads and released them towards the middle of the 7 peaks. Boom! I saw a palace complex with more than a dozen peaks appearing among the 7 peaks. Seeing Zhongmenping's station, Qin Xian couldn't help but nodded, looked at the other surrounding peaks, held his chin and said, "These 7 peaks can't be wasted. Anyway, I have occupied this place, why not these 7 peaks have become my sect's peaks?" The words fell, Qin Xian had no ink marks, he just did what he said. The mountain peaks that were originally thick with trees and full of monsters suddenly turned into a group of splendid palaces. A formation was also arranged here. This formation also requires 7 stone pillars for assistance, and there are 7 peaks here that can be used. This formation can withstand the full blow of the high-level martial emperor. It can be considered a sect-protecting formation. The disciples in the profound heaven sect square had already felt that the spiritual energy nearby had become more intense. They couldn't help but open their eyes, got up and walked out quickly. And because Lin Tian in his courtyard also felt the difference in aura, he took Xue Ling out of the sect. Outside the sect, the profound heaven sect has changed greatly at this time. Seeing the strange scene outside, Lin Tian frowned and murmured, "Did Master do something?" Xue Ling, who was beside him, saw this scene, leaned on Lin Tian's shoulder, and whispered softly, "I feel carefully, this should be the central territory you often call, and now we are not within the Sky Empire. Why aren't you here? Is it possible that Master wants to do something?" Lin Tian asked with confusion. Before he could say anything else, Qin Xian's figure appeared in front of the two of them.